The Upturned drops the player into the perspective of an unnamed hat-wearing character, known only as the Traveler. Newly dead and wandering the afterlife, that wandering leads to the Upturned Inn, a towering hotel run by a relentlessly cheerful figure named Ik, short for Ikabod Key, who informs the Traveler that they already have a reservation, because everyone does. Ik tells them their room is on floor 1434. The elevator immediately loses power before it can get there, and the rest of the game is built around fixing that same problem over and over again. Find a fuse somewhere on the current floor, haul it back to the elevator, ride up until it breaks, again, repeat. The first floor the elevator actually breaks down on is floor 13, and the game leans into that number rather than treating it as a coincidence. The room is stocked with bad omens on arrival. Ik mentions the tenants spilled salt. There are ladders positioned right at the entrance that most players end up walking under, and mirrors break somewhere nearby. The elevator falls from floor 15 down to floor 13 to get there, which reads as strange on a first playthrough until the game later reveals the entire premise of the building runs in reverse. The Traveler has exactly two abilities the entire game, grabbing and throwing. There's no weapon beyond whatever happens to be lying around a given floor, and the only way to fight back against the inn's monsters is to pick up furniture, debris, or in some cases the monsters themselves, and hurl them. That limitation shapes every encounter. A threat isn't solved by aiming better, it's solved by finding something throwable, fast. And the game is explicit that this scavenging loop, not combat skill, is the core challenge. Each floor plays like its own self-contained puzzle box, dressed up as wildly different settings: a glass pane factory, an aquarium, an abandoned shopping mall, a Wild West town, a library, and an asylum among them. Each with its own hazards, its own fuse to locate, and its own resident monster, with a distinct personality and behavior pattern rather than a generic enemy template. Some monsters attack outright, others approach with intentions that aren't immediately hostile, which means the frantic throwing mechanic doesn't apply cleanly to every encounter. Part of navigating a floor is figuring out which creatures actually need to be fought. The roster of monsters varies as much as the settings do. Jacks are orange, bipedal creatures with wide, gaping jaws that lunge and bite at close range. Crows are individually weak, carrying only a single point of health, but they swarm in flocks that burst out of vents or hatch from large pink eggs disturbed during exploration. And a subdued crow can even be picked up and thrown at other crows as an improvised weapon. Water slugs lurk in the game's flooded spaces, sensing vibration rather than sight, and will dart at anything that disturbs the water near them, including a piece of thrown furniture used deliberately as a distraction. The asylum floor's most notable resident is a creature the fandom calls Shrimp, who can be pacified with a boombox or other noise-making prop when he turns hostile. Elsewhere in the hotel, players can also find a collar to put on him, one of the game's stranger optional achievements. Looming above all of them is the Fat Pajama Man, a recurring, unkillable threat, first roused from sleep by the player, and then set loose to chase them through the rest of the level. He can smash straight through ceilings in pursuit, outruns the player outright, and deals enough damage on contact that getting caught more than twice without a medkit is fatal. He can be stunned, but will block thrown objects with his arms if the player wastes that window carelessly. The inn's geography holds its own reveal. When the Traveler eventually falls and wakes on floor 1397, Ik reluctantly admits that the towering structure visible from outside is hollow, all for show. The real hotel goes down, not up. Every floor the player has been climbing toward was actually descent, dressed as ascent. And the elevator's fall from 15 to 13 at the very start of the game was the first easy-to-miss confirmation of that fact. Scattered throughout the main floors are collectible chocolate bars, which make a distinct sound, audible from a moderate distance so players can track them down without hunting blind. Collecting both chocolate bars hidden on a given floor unlocks a corresponding bonus level, a set of optional side stages that were rolled out after the base game's release rather than shipping with at launch. These bonus floors tend to strip the core mechanics down to a single gimmick, rather than mixing puzzle and combat the way the main story floors do. One example, built around collecting both chocolate bars on floor 195, turns the entire level into a duck shooting puzzle. The elevator opens onto a room with a deep pit full of springs and a locked-off section, and the objective is to use a gun that fires live ducks to knock a lever on the far side, then leap into the springs to retrieve the floor's fuse without falling into the pit itself. The fate awaiting most guests at the inn is not subtle. Once it's spelled out, after finding their room, guests are quickly incapacitated and mutilated into monsters themselves. Then left to roam the floors or get locked away in cages and jars. The horde of unique creatures scattered throughout the inn isn't a separate cast of villains. It's the accumulated result of everyone who checked in before the traveler did. Ik didn't always run things this way. Roughly 40 years before the game's events, he gave up ownership of the inn to a figure called Mr. Saab in exchange for his own safety and the inn's continued existence. And it's Mr. Saab who turned the hotel into what it currently is, transforming tenants into monsters in the process. Partway through the game, the traveler starts receiving calls from an unknown voice offering help, and the game eventually reveals that voice belongs to Mr. Saab himself, using the appearance of assistance to draw the traveler closer rather than protect them. Ik's own backstory ties the entire afterlife setting to a specific catastrophe. In April of the year 2037, humanity discovers a meteor on a collision course with Earth and builds a mega nuke named Big Boy to destroy it. A series of worldwide catastrophic events unfolds alongside that effort, culminating in Big Boy's own explosion, which triggers the apocalyptic scenario underlying everything the traveler now finds themselves inside. Ik shares the story of his own death as part of this account, describing being forced out of his father's truck on a mountain as dark clouds rolled in and a passing truck driver leveling a shotgun at him, before he's ultimately killed when a falling tree crushes him. If this one resonated, subscribe. New essays drop weekly, and you never know what's coming next. Share it with someone who'd get it, and leave a comment. I want to know which door this opened for you. Mystery Compendium, the archive is always open.